Hello everyone, it's Grapevine, and today we are going to be playing ClanGen. This is the edit by SableSteel. It's been going around on YouTube for quite a while. I started playing back in September, so that's where this footage starts off from. But originally this game was made by just some cat, but I will just let my past self take over from here, and I will be interrupting as we go. But we're going to start over again with Sand Clan, because that's a colony that I'm trying to develop very slowly, just like all the other colonies that I have. Let's name the clan. So when you start off, you have to choose your medicine cat and your leader. So let's see who would be a good leader for Sand Clan. So far, I'm not sure how to feel about all of these guys. Now, for me, I don't want to choose any elders. So that leaves Rebel, Nose, Green Star, Clover Star, Water Star, and that's about it. I think I like Rebel Star the best, so this will be our leader. Now, as for Medicine Cats, I think Clover Swoop would be a good medicine cat. Now, from here we can choose 4 to 7 more members. So, I like to take some of the kittens. But in this case, we're going to take some apprentices. And I just take even the elders that I tend to like. Even though they can't really do that much. Alrighty. Let's take Bumblepaw, Waterlight, and Green Leg. And that's all we can take for now. Now let's see. I will be rolling a d20 to see if any of our cats can have mates yet. We rolled a 14, so some of these cats can have mates now. So now I'm going to roll a d20 again to see if Rebel Star is interested in females or males. We got a 3, so she is interested in males. I think Waterlight would be a good mate for her. And that's the only mates I'm going to be choosing for now. Since there's so few cats, we're just going to send them all on patrol for now. Every single one of them. Second by missing rats. Alrighty. So they didn't do too well on their first day of patrol. Now, how many moons are we going to pass? I will be rolling a d6. We will pass 1 moon. Now that I've taken you through the gameplay a little bit, I'd like to go back and more thoroughly introduce each of the characters and this world a little bit. The Sand Colony is in between the Gorge Colony and the Fog Colony. I've drawn this very rough map. It's definitely not final, to get an idea of how each colony is set up in this fictional warrior cat-based world. The Sand Colony has settled inside bushes and cactuses that line up an old dried river. The entrance is defended by prickly cactuses that experienced members know how to navigate and safely move without getting prickled. But there's also a special hidden tunnel that leads outside for apprentices to learn to navigate. Much of the land is covered in sand or mesa rocks. Meetings and important announcements are made on the Calling Rock. The leader's den is at the highest point in camp and is shared with the deputy, but since I forgot to pick one, Star Rebel has chosen a new deputy for a few moons. The healer's den is in an old river tunnel that still has a small pond for sick cats to drink. The warrior's den is in the inside of a bunch of piled up rocks, and whenever the warrior's den is full, they can easily just dig out more room. The apprentice's den is woven with sandy bushes and decorated with cactus flowers in the springtime. The nursery is beside a small pond, and it's connected to the elder's den. That's basically an abandoned bunny burrow, and it's near the edge of the camp. Stones in camp provide plenty of moss for cats who need new nests. Alrighty, let's meet our starter cats. Starting with our leader, Star Rebel is an orange tabby she-cat with green eyes and a white spot on her chest. She often feels lonesome until she becomes mates with Waterlight, but she's a fantastic teacher to all cats of the colony. After her last deputy died in a fire that claimed many lives of the colony, she felt a little abandoned by the stars and decided to not appoint another deputy. Sometimes cats of the colony ask her about stories of her days when she was just an apprentice or a young warrior, but she ends up telling boring stories about cleaning the elder's den, or that one time she caught a mouse big enough to feed 3 cats. Little do they know that before she became leader, she led a very sad life because her parents died when she was very young, as well as she's seen the traumatizing way the last leader had died. She doesn't think it's worth dwelling in the past and decides to tell boring stories because of that. Our medicine cat is Clover Swoop, who is a black and white spotted she-cat with green eyes. She's very strict when it comes to cats with injuries. But in the early days, she was a fantastic hunter when there just wasn't enough cats to go hunting. She defended Bumble Ash from a rat when Bumble Ash was an apprentice, and that's how she earned the scar in her... and that's how she earned the nick on her ear. She decided she wanted to be a medicine cat because she could easily communicate with the stars in her dreams, and that she could easily remember exactly how to treat injuries. Unfortunately, her mentor has passed away just a few moons ago. She believes that she could have prevented it. Next is our warrior's Waterlight, who is a male. Next is our warriors, starting with Waterlight, who is a white tom with light gray spots and dark blue eyes. He is a senior warrior at the time and became mates with Star Rebel, even though he's very insecure and shy. On the other hand, he's a good teacher who Star Rebel relies on to give her advice on matters within the colony. Dust Spring is currently his apprentice, and her training is shaping up well. He often takes Dust Spring on as many hunting patrols and border patrols as possible in hopes that one day she'll become the next deputy. He doesn't think the other current warriors are quite worthy of the title, even himself, and that might be the reason why Star Rebel hasn't chosen a new deputy yet. Our next warrior is Greenleg, who is a sandy-colored tom with green eyes. I've decided to interpret him slightly as a flame point because I figured it would be a little bit more interesting than just the plain color. He's a very daring and extremely smart warrior, but he often rushes into things, such as border scuffles or investigating the strange two-leg items, which often leads him to a visit to the medicine den. Because of these visits, he grew very close to Clover Swoop, and they chose each other as mates a few moons later. His apprentice is Bumble Ash, and she was assigned to him in hopes that he'll slow down a little, while he could help her become more decisive. They often end up arguing with each other instead. Our first apprentice is Dust Spring, who is a gray tabby she-cat with green eyes. She has a very strong connection to the stars, but due to this, she's very righteous and thinks she's right about everything. Her mentor is Waterlight, and does not hide the fact that she hopes to be leader one day. Hopefully, as she gets older, she'll calm down a little and become a little more graceful. But for now, she's a bundle of energy. Our other apprentice is Bumble Ash, who is a brown she-cat with amber eyes. Her mother is actually Holly Ash, who has retired to the Elder's Den after the fire and served many moons. She visits her mother quite often to take care of her. But her mentor is a Greenleg, and he's always trying to drag her out for patrols. She's usually a very calm cat, but the two get into arguments quite often because she thinks that they need to think before acting, and he doesn't really want to. We next have our kittens, starting with Tall Whisker, who is a brown tabby tom with amber eyes. He tends to be a little insecure, but he's a great fighter, often getting into trouble for pouncing on unsuspecting cats' tails. His mother and littermates passed from the fire, but doesn't really seem to affect him much because he's also very headstrong. His best friend is Blackberry, who also lives in the nursery, and she often gets into trouble with him. Our other kitten is Blackberry, who is a black she-cat with green eyes. She also lost her mother and littermates in a fire, and tends to be a little cold because of this. It takes her a long time to warm up to other cats, but her best friend is Tall Whisker, and she often gets into trouble with him because of his plans. Our last cat is our elder Holly Ash, who is a brown tabby she-cat with blue eyes. Her daughter is the apprentice Bumble Ash, who visits her quite often and helps to tell stories sometimes to the kids. Holly Ash often tells Bumble Ash not to worry about her because she knows that Bumble Ash has apprentice duties to take care of. She suffered some smoke inhalation from the fire and suffers from asthma attacks. When she was a younger cat, she's very smart and faithful in the stars. She secretly also holds a grudge that Star Rebel hasn't chosen a new deputy yet, but she also thinks that the current warriors aren't worthy of the title. Within the 3 moons since last time, Tall Whisker is made into an apprentice of the colony, and Bumble Ash has had her assessment. She's immediately made into a warrior after scaring off a dog. Unfortunately, Tall Whisker was involved in this incident and was scarred in the process. In-game, I reviewed the footage, and there's actually no explanation for his scars. So this is the explanation I'm giving. All the cats of the colony are helping hunt during the season, so that way in the summer, they'll have some prey stocked up and they won't have to hunt during the day. As a warrior, Bumble Ash is usually heading patrols and trying to keep everyone in line. She's a little bit more lax and can easily think on her toes when it comes to border skirmishes. Her mentor Greenleg still ends up in accidents from heading into battle without thinking. At this point, she doesn't really think it's worth arguing with him anymore. If he's going to get into an accident, then might as well let him. Her mother, Holly Ash, is very proud of her, and because Bumble Ash is so level-headed, she thinks her daughter would be an excellent new deputy. However, Star Rebel still refuses to appoint a deputy. If you were here last time, this was at a point where the game didn't force you to choose a deputy right away, and I forgot to set one. So, story reasons, Star Rebel does not want to choose a deputy. Star Rebel takes an interest in Tall Whisker's training and takes him on as an apprentice herself. Tall Whisker starts off as very headstrong and confident, but after his accident, he's a little less willing to go and get in trouble. Blackberry is a little lonely without anyone in the nursery, so she ends up spending a little time with Holly Ash in the Elder's Den, hearing stories of colonies past and dreaming of the day that she'll be made into an apprentice next. Sometimes Tall Whisker thinks of Star Rebel as a new mother figure, because she dotes on him after the accident, always making sure that his scars aren't bothering him too much. We gotta pass 3 more moons. 1, 2. Duskspring is now a warrior and had 2 kits. Holly Ash died, and Blackpaw has started their apprentice. Alrighty, so let's have a look at everybody. Rumblestar's helping Greenleg with a recent injury. Duskspring is feeling down. Bumble Ash is amused with Tallpaw. Greenleg doesn't want to talk to Clover Swoop. Tallpaw is sharing a fresh kill with Greenleg. Clover Swoop is spending a considerable amount of time grooming. Waterlight is feeling down. Blackpaw is feeling happy. Hailkit is curious about other clans. Hailkit looks so cute. Stagkit has been acting suspiciously. So what has Stagkit been up to? Let's roll and see if we have any more mates. That's a 20, so yes. Duskspring is getting a mate. Is Duskspring into males or females? Duskspring is into females. So we'll put her with Bumbleash. Now, Duskspring, as a warrior, has learned a lot through her training, is a bit less boastful. She knows that she can't be made into a deputy without an apprentice first. She still hopes to be made a deputy one day. The only way to get there is for there to be more kittens in the colony. This leads her to be very focused on relationships and trying to convince other cats to have kittens, much to their annoyance. Instead, she ends up having a relationship herself with a rogue cat traveling past all the colonies. Once this cat was on his way, it wasn't long before she had kittens herself. Duskspring isn't the biggest fan of being stuck in the nursery, but luckily Bumbleash steps in as a nursery aide to let her get breaks every once in a while. This is also because her mother got sick and passed away. She tries to find things to distract herself from the grief, which leads her to take on too many duties. Over the course of their time together, the two end up falling in love and becoming mates. Duskspring's kittens, Stagslip and Hailwind, are very inquisitive about the colony and end up in just as much trouble as Blackberry and Tallwhisker used to. Luckily, they're both too small to get into too much trouble. And also, Blackberry was made into an apprentice around the same time, so she's not there to get into trouble herself. Stagslip is more curious than Hailwind, but Hailwind is more daring than Stagslip, so they can be a dangerous combination together. Blackberry is very happy to be in the apprentice den with her friend Tallwhisker again. The two love to go on training together often, and Star Rebel is trying to learn not to be too overbearing on her apprentice. Unfortunately, Duskspring is a queen at this point and can't take Blackberry on as an apprentice. Instead, she was made into Bumbleash's apprentice. Sometimes Bumbleash lets her take Blackberry out to try and learn what being a mentor is like, while she takes care of Duskspring's two kittens. Blackberry prefers the day she trains with Bumbleash over Duskspring because usually Duskspring tries to take her on training without Tallwhisker. She knows they can't always be together, but she kind of wants to make up for lost time at this time. Green Lake has had a litter of kittens. Clover Swoop had kittens. Waterlight had kittens. Green Lake has kittens again. Hailkit invites a loner named Holly Creek to join. Duskspring had a litter of two kittens. Tallwhisker is now a warrior. Blackpaw finds Stagkit dead in the snow. Waterlight finds Owlkit dead in the snow. Holly Creek learns some new moves, but for now, there's a mystery to solve. During the night, Owlshade and Stagslip manage to sneak out of the nursery without arousing any suspicion. Everyone thinks that the two kids are sleeping in the nursery with their mothers and siblings. It isn't until the next morning that Waterlight and Blackberry find Owlshade and Stagslip dead in the snow on their morning border patrol. While I was playing, I noticed that Stagslip was acting suspicious at one point, and also that Bumbleash was acting suspicious after they found them. I quickly grew to suspect that the killer was Bumbleash, not realizing that Owlshade was one of her kittens. There are plenty of evil mothers in the original story, so it isn't exactly out of the question whether she was the killer or not, but I'd like to gather your opinions. Is Bumbleash the killer, or is the killer still on the loose? What happened that night to the kittens? Is there even a killer? Did the kittens just sneak out and stay out too long in the snow? Last time we left out on a mystery to solve, and this is what I've gathered from all the feedback that was left. Owlshade and Stagslip ventured out into the snow, managing to sneak by the Night Watch undetected. The two are out playing together, and that's when Bumble Ash notices that the two are missing from their nest. Instead of rousing anyone, she decides to hunt down the missing kittens herself. When she noticed the two playing in the cold, she filled with this rage that they dared not follow her rules. She stalks the two like prey and easily strikes the two kittens dead. Bumble Ash washes her paws in the snow and goes back to her nest unseen. The next morning, Waterlight and Blackberry go on patrol and find the two kittens. The colony is stricken with grief at the unforeseen deaths of the kittens, especially the parents, thus Spring Cloverswoot, Bumble Ash, and Greenleg. The other kittens don't quite understand what's happened until much later on. No one knows who killed the kittens that night, but some cats notice the deadly gleam from Bumble Ash's eyes when some cats don't follow the rules, and that's what they find so suspicious. As a medicine cat, Cloverswoot notices the way that these kittens were killed, and she knows that they were murdered. There's just nothing she can do about it because she doesn't know who did it. I also left off on introducing a bunch of the kittens and the new loner that joined the colony. I decided to do this in groups, starting off with Holly Creek. Holly Creek is a new loner that was convinced to join by a Hailwind. Holly Creek is a male vengeful warrior, and I personally think he grew up as a loner, but he doesn't really talk much about his life as a loner. I also think he decided to join the colony because he was a little bit lonely, and he knew as he got older it would be getting harder and harder to defend himself. The colonies welcome pretty much any loner because they know life can get pretty hard out there, and they aren't going to turn away another set of paws to help defend their colonies. The first set of kits belong to Dust Spring and Bumble Ash. They're both females, so I'm choosing to believe they adopt the kittens they give birth to, whether that's a loner doesn't want to join the colony but wants a better life for her kittens, or just a lost kitten who doesn't have a mother anymore. Lost Blaze and Amber Eyes came from the same litter. Amber Eyes tends to be a little bit too rough when the two play together, but Lost Blaze has a good eye for her and knows how to catch her by surprise. They're not as much as a handful as Hailwind and Stagslip was, but they keep everyone's paws full just the same. The next set of kits belong to Waterlight and Star Rebel. These two tend to take turns in the nursery after a mood of Rebel Nose being stuck in the nursery so the kittens could feed. That way they both can continue to oversee the colony. Twigstep and Little Willow are both shy little kittens because they know that their parents are a big deal within the colony, so they try not to get into too much trouble. Twigstep is a little bit more insecure and doesn't think he'll live up to the colony's expectations, and Little Willow is nervous but excited to prove himself. The largest and final set of kittens belong to Greenleg and Cloverswoot. Just like Star Rebel, she takes turns with Greenleg spending the night in the nursery with her kits. It's a busy job trying to balance her healer's duties, but also take care of her kittens. Greenleg doesn't mind helping out where he can, and he really enjoys having kittens to look after. Dustpad, Dapplebur, Birchleaf, Crowfur, Brownbird, Scorchheart, and Pikeheart are also well aware of how important their mother is to the colony, but they always respond to that responsibility in different ways. Dustpad, Crowfur, Brownbird, Scorchheart, and Pikeheart don't really think about or care much about the responsibilities laying on their shoulders, while Dapplebur and Birchleaf think about this responsibility a lot and try their best not to get into too much trouble. They're all ready and willing to prove themselves to the colony, but none of them are really looking to be a healer's apprentice and instead want to be warriors like their father. Maybe it's the fact that they see how much work their mother has to do on a daily basis that makes them not want to be a healer's apprentice. Who knows? Dapplebur in particular thinks that Owlshade died too young, and as he gets older and learns more about what happened, he's a little bit suspicious of his own clanmates. There's also this incident where Brownbird, Twigstep, and Scorchheart manage to hunt down a rabbit and bring it back to the colony, much to their parents' annoyance. Another thing that has changed is the fact that Tall Whisker and Blackberry are now warriors within the colony. It wasn't very surprising to any cat that it wasn't long that the two became mates. As a warrior, Tall Whisker is well aware of all the duties a leader has to possess, and he doesn't mind helping out his mother figure Star Rebel in the nursery with her 2 kittens. In fact, he really enjoys it and hopes that one day he and Blackberry can have kittens of their own. Every once in a while, Tall Whisker gets into disagreements with Star Rebel, but it isn't long before the two settle whatever disagreement they had. Blackberry, as a warrior, loves helping out in the nursery where she can as well. She's always going out of her way to make sure that the kittens have warm, comfortable nests to sleep in. In particular, she tries to find the best feathers to add to their moss. This sometimes leads her into a little bit of trouble, like the time she drove away a dog, all by herself. Hailwind was also made into an apprentice. This time he was made into Dustspring's apprentice. Now that Bumbleash is spending most of her time in the nursery instead of her, Star Rebel thinks it's time for her to be able to have an apprentice of her own. She's also personally seen how she helped train Blackberry and thinks that she was a good teacher. However, Hailwind is very excited to be an apprentice and often gets scolded for straying too far. Dustpad is given to Blackberry and hopes she'll curb his troublemaking tendencies, and Dapplepur to Tall Whisker in hopes that he'll teach the young cat to be more confident within himself. Unfortunately, there was this incident where Dustpad got his tail caught under some rocks and they had to amputate some of his tail. In the game, I know it's set an otter, but otters don't really make sense in the sandy desert they live in. As an apprentice, Dustpad has a little bit more of an outlet to fuel his energetic tendencies, and Blackberry loves to keep him busy helping out the queens in the nursery in particular. Dustpad isn't really interested in the nursery at all, but he can still see why the queens need help with their kits. Dapplepur is still a nervous ball of energy, but with Tall Whisker's help he's able to hunt and patrol for the colony. He doesn't really like being in the spotlight though, so he tries to avoid being in the leading patrols and stays a little bit behind the others. Sometimes he helps out in the nursery with Dustpad and helps play with the kits while their mothers get a long needed break. The colony has been dealing with some violent rogues on their territory. Hailwind, Dapplepur, and Dustpad as apprentices are carefully watched for. They're not allowed to go out without their mentor and another warrior for their protection. The kittens stay inside the nursery for the most part, with their mothers looking after them, and occasionally Green Lake takes over so Cloverswoop can gather herbs for any incoming battle, as well as make herb bundles so that way she can care for cats faster during the battle. Star Rebel looks to the stars for answers, and she has a vision. She's not sure what to make of the vision, and talks to Dustspring one morning when they go hunting together. Dustspring carefully admits that the vision might be a sign that she's going to lose her final life fighting these rogues off. Little do the two know that they were being watched by Dustpad, Hailwind, and Dapplepur, who had snuck away from their mentors. Upon hearing the vision, they decide to do something. One night, they sneak away from their mentors, and when they find the rogues, they scare them away in the night, thinking a spirit is chasing them, and that if they don't leave their territory, terrible things will happen to them. At first, no one knows why the rogues had disappeared, but eventually Dapplepur can't help but confess to Star Rebel what they had done. She reassures Dapplepur that they had done nothing wrong, but she won't tell anyone what she now knows. However, she's well aware of how close she was to losing her final life. All of our kits have been made into apprentices. There are so many apprentices that some cats have to take 2. All the cats in the colony are helping these cats learn to defend themselves, defend the colony, feed the colony, and take care of the colony. Waterlight takes on Crowfur and Amber Eyes, but it isn't long before the colony notices that Waterlight is having more and more trouble keeping up with the 2 apprentices. In the game, he's becoming an elder. Crowfur is cold and smart, while Amber Eyes is a little bit bloodthirsty. These two can be a deadly combination in battle training, but also they can easily fill up the prey pile together. Greenleg takes on Little Willow. While Greenleg is a little bit reckless in battle, he imparts his knowledge of hunting to Little Willow, and he prefers to go hunting rather than battle training or border patrols. He doesn't get into arguments like Blackberry did, but instead he tries not to get in Greenleg's way when he's being a bit reckless. Star Rebel takes on Pikeheart. Pikeheart is loving and turns out to be an excellent fighter during training. He tends to go on border patrols, and he tries to help the other apprentices with their battle training as much as he can. There's only so much he can do for them. He's also quick to remind Star Rebel to take breaks to rest. Tall Whisker also takes on Lost Blaze with his other apprentice, Dapplebur. While Dapplebur is extremely smart and nervous, Lost Blaze is daring and a great hunter. Dapplebur prefers to help out around camp with the nursery queens or help gathering herbs for his mother Cloverswope, much to Lost Blaze's annoyance, because he'd rather be out hunting with the other apprentices. It's a little bit of an adjustment for Tall Whisker, because he much prefers to be on border patrols or helping with battle training. Bumble Ash takes on Scorchheart and Twigstep. Scorchheart is loving and turns out to be quite a bit of a good teacher when she can help the other apprentices with their duties. Twigstep also turns out to be just as good of a teacher as Scorchheart is, but he's a little bit insecure, so it takes him a while to speak up on his knowledge to the others. Finally, Holly Creek takes on his first apprentice, Birchleaf. Birchleaf has a very strong connection to the stars, but Holly Creek doesn't really believe in that kind of thing since he grew up as a rogue. He doesn't really understand why his apprentice keeps going on about cats with stars in their pelts in her dreams, and he doesn't really care to find out. Birchleaf is a nervous little cat who often jumps over the slightest noises, much to her colony mates' teasing. There were also 2 kittens born, Amberhawk and Frostwing. Bumble Ash and Duskspring take the 2 kittens, and in between duties are taking care of them in the nursery. It's a lot of work taking care of the colony during this kitten boom. It's also harder to feed them during winter. In the midst of all this, the colony finds a lone apprentice begging to join, and they allow him to join. He is made into Waspstep and given to Blackberry with her other apprentice, Dustpad. Waspstep was abandoned by his mother as soon as he was able to fend for himself. And when he saw all of these colonies taking care of each other, that's when he decided he wanted to join. Now that he's part of the colony, he's very faithful to it, and all that time alone made him into an excellent hunter. Dustpad is a fantastic teacher to this young cat, teaching him all of the ways of the colony with Blackberry's help. Hailwind was made into a warrior and immediately given Brownbird as an apprentice. Brownbird is a fierce warrior, and he also tends to prefer battle training or border patrols. Hailwind doesn't really mind it all that much because he doesn't really have a preference, but he still teaches his new apprentice the different ways to help serve their colony. During the leaf fall, tragedy strikes again. A contagious disease sweeps through the colony, and Hailwind and Amber Eyes die due to catching the disease. Brownbird is also found dead on the colony's border not too long after that. So much so that he wasn't even able to get assigned to a new mentor. No one knows who killed him, but some cats remember how suspicious Bubble Ash was when Owlshade and Stagslip were killed, which isn't too far off the mark. Bumble Ash saw Brownbird hunting on an enemy colony's grounds and decided that if he wasn't going to follow the rules, then he didn't need to be around any longer. Her colony was for cats that followed the rules. What Bumble Ash doesn't expect is that later on Cloverswoop finds a scrap of fur in Brownbird's claws. A scrap of fur isn't much to provide as evidence of Bumble Ash's actions. She could easily lie about why her fur was there, such as being a mentor for battle training. So Cloverswoop keeps the knowledge to herself, lying in wait for Bumble Ash to screw up again. This is the second time that Bumble Ash has murdered one of her kits, so she wants solid proof for her colony mates. But also, some relief fills the colony when Dustpat and Dapplebird are made into warriors, and Dustspring takes over training Crowfur for Waterlight so he can finally retire to the Elder's Den. But they don't really have to fill in for long when Crowfur was made into a warrior. Waterlight's not really happy about being an elder because he feels like he's a burden to the colony, but cats are quick to reassure him that he's earned a rest. Dustpat is looking forward to training future apprentices of his own. But for now, he does like to prove himself by leading battle patrols or border patrols. Since they were made into warriors around the same time, Dapplebird and Dustpat are pretty close to each other. Dustpat loves to support his brother as much as he can and tends to take over battle and border patrols for Dapplebird. Dapplebird hasn't really changed much from being an apprentice. He's still a nervous ball of energy, but he has learned a few coping strategies so he isn't too anxious. His colony mates still love to tease him a little, but they try not to be too hard on him. Crowfur is just as cold and calculating as he was as an apprentice, but he tries to not be too overbearing on the others. He takes satisfaction in a job well done, but he understands there are times where you don't have to be so serious. Birchleaf, Scorchheart, Pikeheart, Twigstep, and Little Willow are now all warriors of the colony. It's taken a lot of work to train them, but they're ready to help the colony out with the younger generation of warriors. As warriors, Birchleaf and Scorchheart in particular get into many disagreements, and they don't really get along. Birchleaf is still a nervous cat, and she still has dreams about the cats with stars in their fur. She spends her nights hunting with them in the stars, and during the day she helps her colony out as much as she can. She's not sure if she'll ever be ready to be in the position to take on an apprentice, and thinks that she wouldn't be a worthy enough mentor. She feels just fine being in the position that she is in now, and doesn't really dream of changing that. Scorchheart, on the other hand, looks forward to training an apprentice and can't wait to be assigned one. She's a little bit ambitious and hopes to one day move up in the colony hierarchy, but she understands that there are a lot of cats that are older and more experienced than she is. For now, she's trying her best to impress Star Rebel and the senior warriors of the colony. Pikeheart spends a lot of his time making sure that his colony mates are well rested, and if they're struggling a little bit, he goes out of his way to help them out a little. A bunch of the colony now relies on his help, and it's easy for them to see that it won't be long before he has an apprentice of his own to worry about instead. Twigstep still has a little trouble speaking up due to being overshadowed by the rest of his colony mates, but they do know they can sometimes ask him for advice, and he'll give them some really good advice. As of right now, he's not too sure he wants an apprentice yet, and he isn't really looking forward to moving up ranks just like Birchleaf. He's a lot more comfortable spending time with Pikeheart and Scorchheart compared to Birchleaf, though. A moon later, Waspstep and Lost Blaze are also warriors of the colony. Waspstep feels really comfortable around Lost Blaze, but Lost Blaze is more comfortable with Dustpat in particular, so I like to imagine that they just kind of hang out in similar circles, but Waspstep really looks up to Lost Blaze on what it's like to be in a colony cat. I also don't think either of them are the type to want to go out of their way to impress the colony, so they can become a deputy later on in life. Amberhawk and Frostwing are made into apprentices to Little Willow and Twigstep, but Frostwing quickly earns a scar during their training by fighting off a hostile rogue with their mentor. Amberhawk was assigned to Little Willow in hopes that they'll rub off on each other a little bit. Amberhawk is very smart, and compared to Little Willow being a little bit nervous about being a mentor in general, Amberhawk can be a little bit of a handful, and this leads to her kind of bossing him around and doing her own thing. Frostwing was given to Twigstep, in hopes he'll rub off on him a little. On the other hand, he's a very daring and a fantastic teacher, and Twixtep is a little bit nervous about being a mentor too. While Amberhawk bosses around her mentor, Frostwing takes what his mentor says very seriously. Cloverswoop has a dream about Frostwing. It's a warning that he will go on to do something he thinks is right for the colony, but endangers 2 lives. The stars tell her that she needs to confide in somebody what she knows that Bumble Ash has done, and that cat is Frostwing. They believe that he will be someone that is impartial compared to Cloverswoop, and that eventually he will do the right thing. Even though he's raised by Bumble Ash, he believes in Cloverswoop's story due to the fur she found in Brownbird's claws. He knows that smell belongs to his adopted mother, but he still wants to eventually question what Bumble Ash knows about Stagslip, Owlshade, and Brownbird's deaths. Dustspring and Crowfur have more kittens. Dustspring takes in Softeye, Acorn Whisker, Ravenpelt, and Flowertail. Softeye is a bit of a troublemaker to where Star Rebel has to give them things to do to stay out of it. He loves to bother the older warriors just a little bit. Flowertail usually ends up going along with him because he feels sorry for when Softeye gets into trouble. Acorn Whisker and Ravenpelt prefer to stay out of trouble and spend quite a bit of time listening to Waterlight tell stories in the Elder's Den. Sometimes Acorn Whisker and Ravenpelt do manage to convince Flowertail to come hear stories together. Crowfur has Spikestone, Skyfeather, and Springflower. No one is quite sure who the mother of these kits is, but they're welcome all the same. The reality is that he had a brief relationship with a Fog Colony warrior, but that relationship quickly fell apart after the birth of these kits, and the mother didn't want to keep them in her colony. Spikestone loves to join the other kittens listening to stories from Waterlight, but Sky Blizzard tends to like getting into trouble with Softeye and Flowertail. Sky Blizzard is very inquisitive about the world around him, and that's usually what gets him into trouble. It just isn't very hard to convince him to do things that lead to trouble. Springflower is a nervous little kitten, but he's very good at playing moss balls with the other kittens and tosses the ball really far. The 3 don't really get along together, and they're actually not that very close. Colonymates aren't sure if it's because of the way they were brought into the colony, or if their personalities just clash. I'm going to take time to warn viewers that this next part involves heavily fictionally drawn gore, and that neither cat has died, but 2 cats have gotten into a severe car accident. If you are not a fan of gore, feel free to look away from the screen, or just find another video to watch, because after these scenes is the end of the video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I will include a summary of events in the next video, and you won't miss out on anything if you're invested in this series. Now, on to the video. Bumble Ash is critically wounded by a monster on the Thunderpath. She's too injured to carry out warrior's duties again, and she decides that she'll reside permanently in the nursery. But sometimes she'll sleep with Waterlight to keep him company. The injury is so critical that she has lost her front right leg in particular. She's still just as agile as any other warrior, but she just felt like she was better suited to staying in the nursery. Some cats notice the way that Frostwing is avoiding his adoptive mother's eyes, and sometimes when they do meet, they're filled with scorn. This is because that morning he went out with Bumble Ash and mustered up the courage to ask her what happened to Brownbird, Owlshade, and Stagslip. That he's heard the fact that she was around when Brownbird was found. But really, that part was a bluff on his part. He didn't want to tell her that he learned about this from Cloverswoop. Bumble Ash isn't really ashamed of what she's done, so she confesses that she killed them. They weren't following the rules. They're better off dead anyway to her. As they approach the Thunderpath, monsters roll by behind Bumble Ash as she confesses her secret. And Frostwing is horrified by this tale. He was hoping that maybe, just maybe, Clover Soup was wrong about her, but she wasn't wrong. When she tells him that they're better off dead anyway, he's convinced that she won't just stop killing even if he does talk to her. He makes a split decision and pushes Bumble Ash into the path of the monster. There's a loud screech of the car's tires as it speeds away, leaving Bumble Ash injured in the middle of the road. Frostwing doesn't want to face what he's done, and he runs off into the sandy hillscape. Bumble Ash lies there, leg mangled, and eventually the Dawn Patrol finds her lying there. Frostwing and Clover Soup aren't sure how to feel about the fact that Bumble Ash was able to survive the accident. They hope that maybe she won't be able to kill anymore, but this isn't warrior cats, and cats with missing legs in real life are still able to run and hunt and play like normal. There are plenty of videos from cat owners showing this, and I'm not going to be treating this like warrior cats. Bumble Ash is missing a leg, but she's still capable of doing things after going through rehabilitation therapy. It's a lot to get used to suddenly missing a leg, but she does pick up a few things again after playing moss ball very frequently with kittens in the nursery and just exercising her legs. It's more of a question if Bumble Ash is watched enough to where she can't get away with killing anymore. Tall Whisker and Star Rubble go to check out the Thunderpath that critically injured Bumble Ash a few moons later, and unfortunately a monster was barely by too fast for her to get away from. This attack unfortunately leaves her critically injured, and when she recovers, all the cats notice that she has this unstoppable shaking. In real life, this is called shaken kitten syndrome, and it is a brain injury. Cats like this are still able to live a normal life, but for Star Rebel it is very debilitating, and she just thinks she needs to step down so they have a more capable leader that will be able to give every cat more attention. It's more so for her, I guess you would call a confidence thing. She doesn't feel confident that she can lead her colony anymore. It's harder for her to get to where she needs to go, but Waterlight is prepared to help her out as much as he can. On top of that, if there's any battles, she doesn't think she can help out as much as other cats since it takes her so long to move from one place to the other. Star Rebel is in her last life, and that's part of the reason she decided she would be able to step down. She looks at all the cats of her colony and evaluates all their strengths and weaknesses. Clover Soup also looks to the stars for answers, and finally they both come to a decision. The new leader of the sand colony is Duskspring, and she takes on Tall Whisker as her deputy. Stardusk decides that there should always be a deputy from now on to avoid situations like this. Stardusk was always hoping to be leader one day, but she wasn't really expecting to become leader like this. She's also had an apprentice in the past, so it isn't really a question if she's capable or not of leading. It's more so if she's ready to be leader. She chose Tall Whisker as her deputy because she believes that he's pretty experienced in the colony, and overall he's pretty well liked. He's also tough but fair with the apprentices he has had in the past. They both lead the colony with a tough but fair policies when cats get into too much trouble. While the colony is celebrating the newly appointed Stardusk and Tall Whisker, Clover Swoop takes Duskspring aside and tells her that they must go to the Moon Cave so Duskspring can be given her lives from the stars. The Moon Cave's location is mostly a closely guarded secret between leaders, their deputies, healers, So Dust Spring is largely unsure where Clover Swoop is taking her. I want to briefly explain that I chose this route because I have future plans in mind for the colonies once I have them all introduced. I don't want to spoil things too much, but the basic idea for keeping it a secret is because I feel like if other cats knew about a secret pool where you can gain lives, they would take advantage of that or try to cut the connection of living cats to their ancestors like they've done in the books, I think. Clover Swoop leads her away from the Sand Colony territory and into the Gathering Grounds. This small spread of land is neutral territory for all of the colonies, and it mostly has forests, flowing rivers, and small caves. The biggest cave in the center has a large rock, and this is usually where gatherings are held with the other colonies. There are many openings branching off from this main rock, so usually the more experienced warriors keep a close eye on their apprentices during the gatherings in case they get lost. Clover Swoop picks one of these openings and guides Dust Spring into the darkness with ease. They walk like this for a while, when suddenly a starry pelt in the darkness walks alongside them, guiding them to their destination. One of the paths they're led down is filled with glittering pebbles, like stars in the sky on the roof of the cave. Finally, there's an opening and there's a small pool in the center. The ground is soft, like sand, on their paw pads. Dust Spring follows Clover Swoop's guidance and laps water from the pool, drifting off to sleep. She wakes up in the stars, and she's greeted by her adoptive son, Hailwind. Before she can say anything to him, Hailwind touches his nose to her head and says, "With this life, I give you the strength to not just defend your colony, but the strength to defend your family through the hard times." She feels calm from this life, feeling strength enter from where his nose is touching her head to all the way down to her tail tip. He disappears and is replaced by a cat that Dust Spring has never seen before. She also touches her head and says, "My name is Dandelion Glimmer. With this life, I give you kindness to not just your colony mates, but also kindness to the other colonies. Sometimes the hardest thing is to know when others don't deserve your kindness, and I hope you remember that well, because I didn't." At first, life she was given makes her feel warm, but this is quickly replaced by a searing pain of protectiveness. Dandelion Glimmer steps away, and she's replaced by Holly Ash. Holly Ash smiles as she touches her head with her nose. "With this life, I give you compassion. This is something you have worked very hard to understand with your colony mates, but now you must use this skill to understand the other colonies. I hope you use this skill well. This life sends an overwhelming feeling of sadness, but also a searing pain." Finally, the last cat steps forward. This is our guide to the stars from the game, Whirlclaw. He was an apprentice at the time he passed on to the stars. He has to reach a little bit taller than the other cats to touch his nose to Dust Spring's head. "With this life, I give you curiosity. Use this skill to learn more about your colony mates, to also learn from other colonies. Beware that sometimes curiosity can lead to truths that you do not wish to accept. I'm afraid this is the final life the stars can give you, but I'm sure you will use all these skills till your dying breath. Your name will now be Stardust. Serve your colony well." I also want to explain that cats in this universe only get a total of 5 lives upon being named leader. Since Star Rebel is still alive, Stardust can only be given 4 lives from the stars. This is largely a personal choice because I want to give the leader's death more meaning than the original series tends to do. For example, in The Omen of the Stars, I really felt like they were just killing Firestar off, where they could just have at the end of the series, we would start fresh with Bramblestar. One of the deaths of that series that didn't really end up meaning much was the one where he died from green cough. just didn't have that many stakes for me, and a lot of the times they don't even show the leaders lose some of their lives. I also feel like it's more interesting narratively because while they do have more lives than the average cat, they still have to be careful. They can't just recklessly go into battle and die over and over. It's definitely fun if you enjoy the 9 lives of the series. Again, this is just a personal choice, and I just find it more interesting. Hey, it's Warrior Grayfawn. Today I'm starting this episode off a little bit differently than previous ones. As always, if you want to play ClanGen yourself, it is in the description below. Full credit goes to Just Some Cat and the SableSteel team for creating this fun game. Today, we're going to be going over every cat that has been introduced and talking about how they've been dealing with Star Rebel's accident in the last episode. Because of her accident, she has decided to step down from being leader and retired to the Elder's Den. Stardust was pronounced the new leader of the Sand Colony, and last episode she was given 4 lives to lead her colony with. I personally chose for this University of Cats 5 lives instead of 9, because I thought the stakes would be higher and that the deaths would hold a lot more meaning personally. Stardust only gets 4 because Star Rebel is still alive. Stardust at this stage in life is very happy to be leader because she always dreamed of being leader of her colony. She wasn't really expecting to be made leader like this. She has a lot to prove to the other cats of the colony, and she's at quite a disadvantage of only having 4 lives instead of 5. Currently, the only cats that know she has 4 lives instead of 5 are Tall Whisker and Clover Swoop. She chose not to tell her mate Bumble Ash of her situation because she didn't want to worry her too much. Also, as leader, she has a lot more responsibility to her colony, and so the two haven't been able to be as close as they normally are. Stardust appointed Tall Whisker as deputy of the colony because he's generally well liked and that he's got quite a bit more experience compared to the other cats of the colony. He's very nervous about being made deputy, and he's led patrols before and similar things to that, but being deputy is a lot more responsibility. He's also concerned for his former mentor and mother figure Star Rebel after her accident, and he chooses to visit her quite often. Our healer Clover Swoop has been through so much leading up to this point. She discovered that Bumble Ash is behind quite a few murders, and the stars told her to talk about her situation with Frostwing. They also warned her his actions would endanger 2 lives, and well, Star Rebel is one of those lives. She feels like she let her former leader down, and that if she'd done things a bit differently, maybe Star Rebel would be better. Her mate Greenleg is quite concerned about his mate's condition. He knows that she has been feeling pretty depressed, but as a healer, a lot of the time she can't confide in him the prophecy she receives. He feels like there's quite a bit of distance between them, and this isn't really helped by the fact that they have already lost one of their sons. He knows his son was murdered, but he doesn't know who killed him. He's trying to stay close to his mate so she has someone on her side, but it's tough. Our next warrior is Little Willow. Little Willow is one of Star Rebel's kids, but after her accident, he's chosen to feel the need to prove himself to his colony mates, and largely goes about his business as usual. He leads patrols, hunts, and defends borders to make his parents proud. Picart and Little Willow are acting suspiciously at this time, and 2 moons later it turns out the two are sneaking around because they didn't want to announce yet that they're mates. So right now they're just sneaking around to run together in the moonlight. He also spends time in the nursery with the kits, wondering what it would like to have kids of his own one day. Lost Blaze isn't really getting along with his friends at the moment. He also isn't very kind to Star Rebel and takes his anger out on her. Twigstep hates that he insults his mother like this, and that's largely why the two don't get along anymore. My best guess is that he hates the state his former leader is in, and he's ashamed of her. Either way, he's a very grumpy cat at this point of time. Blackberry's Tall Whisker's mate, and she wants to support him in this transitional time period of their lives. The two have always been very close, and Tall Whisker can share problems with her. For a while now, the two have been wanting to have kids of their own, but right now isn't quite the right time for kids to happen yet, seeing as how emotional Tall Whisker is with the devastating injury his former mentor and mother figure just had. Wolfstep is a loner who joined under Star Rebel's leadership, so I imagine he's very scared about the structure and life under a new leader. I know he probably knows Stardust a little bit, but I don't think they hang around in the same circles as each other. I'm pretty sure though he's scared for no reason. Dustpad's mother is Star Rebel, but he seems to be a relatively calm person, so I think this change hasn't affected him all that much. He likes Stardust as a cat and probably thinks she'll lead without any issues. He's still just as ready to prove himself that he's worthy of maybe becoming a deputy or like a trusted voice to listen to for leaders in the future. Dapplebur is just a scared cat. A lot of things scare him, and I think this change is no different than that. He's keeping his head down and trying to fulfill his duties for the colony, but it's very hard for him. I'm sure his family is supporting him every step of the way. That way in the future, maybe he won't be as scared. Twig's Step is huffy with Lost Blaze because Lost Blaze takes his mother out on his mother Rebel Star. Or Star Rebel, Rebel knows. So they're both just not that close as they usually are. We'll just have to see if that ever changes for these two. I think that this experience kind of hardened him a little bit. You can be an insecure person, but also be able to be a stronger person. So I just think that's how he is currently. Pycar and Scorchheart are scared something will happen to their parents. If something could happen to their leader, then it just becomes a little bit more like real. Something could also happen to their parents in the future, and that's just scary for them. I think up until this point, they kind of felt like they were invincible as warriors, and this is just a big change for them. Crowfire wants to hear more about the stars from Cloverswoot because he's now just not sure what happens after cats pass on from this life. Crowfire knows that he has warrior ancestors looking down at him from the stars, but it's a different thing from seeing rather than believing, if that makes sense. He's also kind of been through a lot himself because he had a half-clan relationship, and the resulting kits were placed with him, so now he has, like, some kits that, they're old enough to not need their mother, but he also still has to, like, watch over his kits now that they are getting a bit older and can get into a lot of trouble. It's just another day for Holly Creek, but he likes Star Rebel a little bit since she was the one to take him into the colony in the first place. He also respects her a little bit despite her injury. Before this, he was a rogue, so for him, I'm not too sure if he believes in the stars that much or not, and that probably leaves him questioning what's going to happen to him, like in the afterlife and things like that, because everybody's talking about it. Birchleap wants to connect even more to the stars and spends more time with her mother Cloverswoot, questioning about her ancestors in the stars. Despite Cloverswoot being a little bit closed off to the others, I think she talks quite honestly to her daughter about their ancestors and what they were like, which is just super interesting for her. Soft Eye is super excited about his mother's new position in the colony and what kind of respect that will bring to their family, not just within the colony, but outside the other colonies. He also is a pretty playful cat, so I don't think this would have changed much for him, besides sticking out his chest a little bit more and superiority to the others. Amberhawk feels more comfortable with his mother Stardusk than his mother Bumble Ash, but I feel like he spends an equal amount of time with the both of them. He also likes Star Rebel quite a bit, so I feel like he's the type of cat that helps out with both Star Rebel and Bumble Ash's care. Now that they've both been injured, he probably tosses moss balls to Bumble Ash to help stretch her muscles now that she's in recovery. Frostwing wants to learn more about the stars. Frostwing wants to learn more about the cats Bumble Ash has killed, so he spends time listening to Star Rebel and Warlight tells stories about them. Again, he's not that very close to his mother Bumble Ash anymore, and spends quite a lot of time away from her as much as possible. I'm sure this makes Stardust a little bit curious about this, but she's very busy and just hasn't had the time to ask. And now onto the nursery. Acorn Whisker is one of Bumble Ash's new kits in the nursery. She's cold personality-wise, but she's also a great hunter, so I imagine she's quite skilled at playing with her litter mates, and probably Amberhawk too. That being said, she's super comfortable and close to both of her parents. Bumble Ash is raising her to be very strict about the warrior code and similar things to that, and because Stardust is so busy, I don't think she's quite aware of how strict she's raising her kits. Flowertail is the third kit of this litter, and he's instead more empathetic, and he's extremely smart. I imagine he's not quite meeting the expectations that Bumble Ash has for him, so I don't think he'll succeed her in any way, which is very annoying for Bumble Ash. Ravenpelt is also one of Bumble Ash's new kits, and because of his strict upbringing, he's got a strict personality type, and he's also being raised to be an excellent hunter by his mother Bumble Ash. Spikestone is the first of the litter that Crowfur brought in from a half-colony relationship. For some reason, his grandma Cloverswoop is super protective of this litter, and I don't think the four cats quite understand why she's so protective of them. Even in the nursery, their grandma is always keeping a keen eye on them, which is probably a good thing because he likes to get into trouble despite being reasonably smart. Springflower dances around excitement about having a new cat to tell stories to them, and the fact that they used to be their leader is just double exciting for the kitten. I don't think he pays that much attention to his grandma Cloverswoop watching out for them, and thinks that it's a pretty reasonable thing for a healer to do, is look out for all cats of the colony, including the smallest members. Skyfeather is the second cat in the litter Crowfur brought home, and he's pretty inquisitive, so I think he's curious why his grandma Cloverswoop is so protective, and asks quite a bit of questions, much to her annoyance, because she can't quite outright tell a small kitten what is going on. Finally, the Elder's Den. Bumble Ash is quite bitter now that she has all these eyes on her in the colony. She can't quite get away with as much as she used to, now that cats are looking out for her in case she needs any help. She wants to raise her kittens with respect for the rules, so that way they can be just like her in some aspects. Her current kits, Ravenpelt and Acorn Whiskers, are coming along quite well in this regard, but Flowertail is kind of giving her no hope for the future. Time will tell if these two kits will be just like her or not, and that is a murderer with a future in the Dark Forest. Waterlight spends much of his time helping his mate Star Rebel out with her daily duties. I think he's much happier now that there are other cats in the Elder's Den besides himself, and it makes him feel a bit more useful because he's insecure, and for a while now he thought he was just a burden for the colony. As Star Rebel is being more rehabilitated, I don't think she'll need quite as much help around the camp, but he's still not far watching out for her. Star Rebel is very insecure now that she is an elder with such a bad injury. Her rehabilitation is going quite well, but she fears being useless now that she can't lead her colony. She wonders what kind of future is there for her, and if her ancestors will be mad at her and maybe punish her for stepping down from leadership, but she knows it was the right thing to do. It's very hard to fight when you're constantly shaking and you're not able to do the things you used to do. Anyway, that is all the cats for this roundup of the sand colony, so to speak. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe so that way you can see more in the future. I also have a link in the description because for every 100 milestones, I draw cats suggested by you guys. So use that link to comment your cat, and I might pick them in the next video for that little series. I also have other things going on, so you might be interested in the other things going on, I don't know. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.